Hello, how's everybody doing today? There are 0 of you in here right now, and I did not remember to bring my hat, so I do have a little bit of hat head from when I was wearing my hat earlier today. Hope everyone's doing well. So Tuesdays, Mondays are trivia day for me. So if I am feeling good enough, which is, every couple of weeks, I get to go. Sorry, wife is texting me. Hey, Grace, how's it going? My wife is getting her hair done, and my son is at the ball pit where they have the hairdresser. And she's worried because he's been there for a while, but my son will just run around like crazy and pretend he's a dinosaur. So I think he'll be fine. On Mondays, I do trivia if I'm feeling okay enough. And then I get home at like midnight, 12:30. So I'm unable to do an analysis article. My son is going to be 4 in 10 days or 12 days on the 6th, on Father's Day. My son turns 4. So it's like that's the best gift I could have ever gotten for Father's Day is my son turning 4. It's going to be beautiful. Yeah. Oh, he's such a smart little dude. I love him. On Tuesdays, I am always going to do my analysis via the video. And then I plan to do, if I can, I plan to do that article that I started doing last week where I go over any lineup changes from what I've talked about now. So, for example, the first game I'm talking about here, the White Sox and the Nationals, let's say I really like Steven Strasburg today, but he's not my favorite pitcher. And then it comes out that the White Sox are resting both Larry Garcia and Yoan Moncada. If that happens, then Strasburg goes up considerably, in my opinion. And it's those kinds of changes that I want to be able to inform you of. Hey, Joe, how's it going, Ethan? How y'all doing today? The one thing I've noticed, unless you're watching a live video, which a lot of people can't do, and I do apologize for that, ironically, in a live video. But when it comes to lineup changes, I don't know anyone who is putting out an article that goes over, anything that's different, the people who are resting that day and how it changes the pitcher, and the article that I'm going to be putting out later is going to do all that. So, it's going to be a companion piece to this, but it has as much information as you can get, and it should tell you everything you need to know. So let's get started with the, that's my dog outside. I thought I was going to start late because as soon as I got downstairs, he started whining to go out. And that takes me a long time to go back up and down the stairs, and it hurts. But anyway, let's get into it. First game is the Chicago White Sox and the Washington Nationals. We have Reynaldo Lopez taking on Steven Strasburg. If you look at the lineups page, bathrobesports.com/lineups, which I always suggest you do, you could see that, we have a White Sox team that has been relatively cold lately, with the exceptions of Garcia and Moncada, and a Nats team that has been pretty hot lately. On top of that, Reynaldo Lopez has been just about the worst pitcher in baseball over the last couple of weeks. If you look, over the last month, basically, since that 14 strikeout game, he has been abysmal. And that is being kind to him. His strikeout per 9 the last couple of weeks is 5.8, which is very bad. His walks are 3.9, very bad. His whip is 2.46, which is astronomically bad. The one thing is he's getting relatively unlucky, but he's still pitching poorly. So, even if you factor the luck in, he's still not someone you want to use, but he is going down the stairs with a 12.5 ERA, a 9 FIP, and a 6.1 xFIP. So again, it's not anything that's usable, but it does show that he has been getting relatively unlucky. Unfortunately for him, he is going against a Nationals team, like I said, that has been hitting really, really well lately, with the exception of Robles and Gomes. They're projected to get 5.3 runs today, which is one of the highest on the slate. And with the exception of Rendon and Soto, they are pretty much underpriced. Trey Turner is 4,900 on DraftKings and 3,800 on FanDuel. He should be over 4,000 on FanDuel and over 5,000 for sure on DraftKings, especially considering the matchup and his ability to get a steal off of Reynaldo Lopez, which is also inflated by the matchup. They don't have the best catcher either. James McCann isn't the best at throwing people out. So, the Nats are in a great spot today, and against one of the worst pitchers, I would absolutely be a huge fan of taking the Nats. I think there's going to be one really chalky team that I'm going to get to later on, given the wind conditions at Wrigley. Hint, hint. But I do believe that the Nats should be one of the most popular plays. The White Sox bullpen isn't very good. Reynaldo Lopez isn't very good. And these are dudes that have been hitting really, really well lately. The one guy that I want to highlight specifically is Brian Dozier. Brian Dozier has proven himself that he's not the hitter that he was a few years ago, where he, went from hot to mediocre and then back to hot. When he was with the Twins hitting 40-something home runs. He has devolved back into the streaky hitter that he was beforehand, before he hit his peak. And that comes, like with any streaky hitter, someone that you're going to want to ride when he's hot and get off of when he's cold. And obviously there are going to be those days when he gets hot and you're not on him because you're not on him when he's cold, and days when he's hot and he cools off and you're going to be on him then, but that's built into it. What is that over the last week, Brian Dozier has an OPS of 1.121, an ISO of 308, and a WOBA of 412, a weighted runs created plus just in the last week of 3, which is fantastic. If you go into all the advanced stats, he is not striking out as much. He isn't walking as much, but he's also not striking out as much. He's just putting the bat on the ball. So everything backs up Brian Dozier being a really, really good play today. He may not have the splits, but Lopez is bad enough, and Dozier has been hitting well enough that for 3,700 on DraftKings and 2,800 on FanDuel, I wouldn't mind even taking him as a one-off. But I really do want to get, a Nat stack there. If you are doing multiple lineups, even if you're doing 3 lineups, it may just be one of the mini stacks, but I would definitely have one of the stacks be of the Washington Nationals. They are just far too good today. Oh, good. I do remember my soda. Up for the Nationals is Steven Strasburg. And again, I apologize for having a drink. Pitching for the Nationals is Steven Strasburg, who has been very, very good recently. If you look at his recent form, we see someone with a 10.3 strikeouts per 9, fantastic, a 1.0 whip, which is fantastic, a 2.57 ERA, and then a 2.15 FIP. So even though he's pitching well, he should be pitching better than he's pitching. He has not given up a home run in the last 2 weeks. This is just someone that is going against a weak offense that strikes out all the time, and he has been in very, very good form. The question is, and I guess I should have started with this because I would have started with this had I written an article. The pitching today is pretty crazy. There are a lot of really, really good options. Let me get the, that might have been today's. Let me get it up anyway. I want to get up the slate for today on DraftKings, make sure that I had the right one, because I did do some of this on my laptop last night and I'm not 100% sure, but I want to go over, all of the pitchers here, just in summary, because again, there are a ton of pitchers. We have Strasburg, Ryu, Snell, Montas, Louis Castillo, Chris Paddock, Shane Bieber, Syndergaard, Kyle Hendricks, Tanaka, Bumgarner against the Mets. And that's just all the people that are 9,000 and over. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pitchers you have to choose from that are 9,000 and over. And then you have Canning, who's been great at 8,500, Miley, who's been great at 8,200, and then Eduardo Rodriguez, who has not been great at 8,000. And that's ignoring all the other pitchers that have a good shot of doing well today. Specifically like a Max Fried at 7,800 against Pittsburgh, who is not that good against lefties. Smeltzer for Minnesota going against a Cleveland offense that is not doing great. I don't expect him to pitch as well as he did in his first game. The video's out on him, but I do think that he showed you what he can do. And this is not, he's not going against the Red Sox here. He's going against Cleveland. He's shown you his upside, and he's only 7,500. There is a lot of pitching today. So paying up for the most expensive pitcher may not be what you want to do, but I would assume that will help separate you from the field. A lot of people are going to want to get some reasonably good bats in there. And in order to do that, they're going to need to scrimp and save every dollar that they can. And in order to do that, they're going to essentially punt off the most expensive pitchers. You're going to see because of the amount of pitchers in the 9K to 10K range, you're going to see those pitchers that are 11K and over, the Strasburg, the Ryu, the Snell, wind up going under-owned for what they should, especially, given the matchups that some of them have. I'm going to look at Roto Grinders right now and see if they're, and according to them, I am wrong. Snell is going to be the most popular pitcher today, and then Strasburg is going to be the third most popular pitcher today. We don't have a lot of any other, no one else in the five-digit range. So no one else over 10K is owned more than 3%. So if you are not playing Ryu and Strasburg and Snell, you have Ryu, Castillo, Montes, Paddock. All of them are going to be at 3% owned and under, and all of them have fantastic upside. So I apologize for doing a little bit of a tangent there, but it is worth knowing that there are a lot of good pitchers today. Strasburg is one of the best in one of the best spots, but he's also going to be projected, according to Roto Grinders, which again, we'll see of how right they are. He's projected to be the third highest owned. I would assume that's wrong. I would think that Strasburg is going to be closer to the 10 to 15% range, but if I'm not telling you what the industry standard is, then I'm not doing my job as a journalist here, especially because that's what I consider myself. I try to, do the best I can. So let's move on to the next game. We have the Braves and the Pirates. Again, what we see generally is that DraftKings is going to be a little more expensive than FanDuel. There'll be similar prices. Sometimes it'll be a little cheaper. But generally speaking, because there's two pitchers, and because, of the more positions on FanDuel and everything else, the pitchers on DraftKings are going to be slightly more expensive than FanDuel. You could see that Stephen Brault is 64 on DraftKings, 61 on FanDuel. But when you look at this, you can see errors in pricing. And one of those errors in pricing is with Max Fried today, because Max Fried is 8,600 on FanDuel, which is pretty much where I would have put him, completely put him around 8,600 on FanDuel, which would mean I would expect him to be about 9,000 on DraftKings, and he's 7,800. If you look, oh man, I want to see if I can find this while I'm talking. I very much doubt that I'm going to be able to, but they just came out with the odds yesterday for who is going to win the Cy Young Award, right? The Cy Young Award winners. I have it as the plus 275. So I don't have it as like a 3-1 or anything, but I can tell you in order right now, Ryu is the overwhelming favorite, then Castillo, Davies, and Greinke, then Scherzer, then Kershaw, Marquez from the Rockies, and Soroka, then DeGrom, then Patrick Corbin, then Nola, which, obviously this didn't factor in yesterday's start, then Strasburg, and then Fried. Max Fried is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th most likely to win the Cy Young in the National League as of right now. And he's 7,800 on DraftKings. He's had granted, his numbers haven't been fantastic, but they haven't been that bad that they should go down, that he should go down in price that much on DraftKings. I would assume that that's some kind of pricing error. Again, there's just absolutely no way. I understand, his last start against Washington, he only got 6.4 DKP. But before that, 19.9, 25.1, 17.3. At the beginning of the year, he had a 29.4 and a 15.8. His two bad starts were against the Dodgers and the Nationals. This is against the Pirates. Pirates, who are a bad offensive team, specifically bad against lefties. I apologize that I'm getting worked up about this, but it's just absolutely ludicrous that Max Fried is that cheap. If you are looking at it and you are going to punt one of the pitchers down in the under 8K range, Max Fried is one of those dudes that should be priced up over 9,000. So if you are playing multiple lineups, I would be over the field on whatever that is. And as of right now, he is projected, according to Roto Grinders, to be the fifth most expensive pitcher, fifth highest owned pitcher at 17%. That is not nearly enough for that kind of pricing error, especially when Eduardo Rodriguez is 8,200 more than him and projected to be 10% more owned than him, especially given his recent form. I know the Royals are bad, but I'm going to get into that a little bit later. So again, Max Fried against the Pirates. Thank you for that pricing error, DraftKings. Don't think I'm going to play him on FanDuel. I would rather go up to one of the ace pitchers there, but Fried is close enough that he shouldn't be priced, under the middle tier guys. On the other side, Steven Brault is a poor pitcher who has been pitching mediocre lately. The 1.0 WHIP is good. The 1.64 ERA is good. The 3.42 FIP is good. But if you look at the underlying stats, you see the problem. A 4.9 strikeouts per nine, meaning you can't count on him to strike anybody out. A 4.1 walks per nine, meaning he's letting people on base. So when you see that, right, if you see that, the 4.1 walks per nine, and then you see the 1.00 whip, either he's been pitching amazingly well or he's been getting amazingly lucky. Right? So at that point, what you would look at is the batting average and the BABIP against. His batting average against is 158 and his BABIP against is 188. Those are phenomenally lucky numbers, meaning that Brault has not been pitching as well as it looks. He's just been getting lucky that people are hitting the ball where not great defense has been playing. So in order to back that up, again, we see, is he climbing the stairs? Like I always say, and he is. The 1.64 ERA climbs up to 3.42 FIP, climbs up to 5.86 XFIP, and a 5.89 Sierra. So Steven Brault has been bad, and he has looked bad. On top of that, this is a Braves lineup that I like better against righties. Freeman is an extreme normal splits hitter, but he's still amazing against lefties. Just because he's that much better against righties does not mean that he can't be used against lefties, because he can, and I would like to use him today. Ozzie Albies is an extreme splits switch hitter in that he can really only hit when he's batting righty. So I will only take Ozzie Albies when they're going against a lefty. With Tyler Flowers in, he should be batting seventh. If he's any higher than that, I would consider him an absolute lock. Austin Riley and Dansby Swanson have been on fire. Both of them have been absolutely mashing lefties. So the Braves have a 5-run total. Again, I don't expect them to be as popular as some other teams, but they are certainly in a fantastic spot. Steven Brault is not a good pitcher, and they are going to be able to take advantage of him. The one thing I will also point out, again, since I update hot and cold every day, I can see when people are moving from cold to hot or vice versa. And Acuna Jr., Ronald Acuna, the leadoff hitter for the Braves, if y'all don't know, was cold as ice just a few days ago, and he has already moved into the middle range, working his way up to the top range. So for someone like Acuna, who's getting hot and is better against lefties, someone like Acuna, who should be and normally is priced around 5,000, for him to be discounted to 4,500, I would like a 4,000, the discount to 4,000, but that kind of a discount for the leadoff hitter going against a bad team when he's almost certainly going to get you some DKP scoring runs, if not everything else. absolutely love Acuna. He might start this game off with a home run. Really, that's how bad Brault has been, even though he hasn't given up a home run in the last couple of weeks. Let us move on next to oh, wow. I'm at 20 minutes already. I take a long time. I'm sorry, guys. I am a verbose motherfucker. Next up is the Yankees and the Blue Jays. This is one, again, where we have another really good pitcher going against a really, really bad pitcher. You can see that the Vegas has a 9-run total with the Yankees projected to win by 1.6 runs, which is a huge. It's not even the third highest for today, but that's still a huge gap. That means that Tanaka really is in a fantastic spot today. I will say that, I will say a couple of things. First of all, given the ceiling, 9,300 for Tanaka just isn't enough. Tanaka has the stuff to be priced at 10K, and he should be priced at 10K, both on DraftKings and on FanDuel. The 93/9,200 price tag for him on both sites is something that you should be taking advantage, like you're taking advantage of Max Fried's pricing. But the second is the corollary that I always give you when I'm talking about Tanaka, which is that he is a pitcher that relies on his stuff, and his stuff relies on how well he's feeling it that day. If he is not feeling it that day, we have a Tanaka who will get blown up by anybody. He will walk everybody. He will not find the plate. And when he does find the plate, he will leave it right over the middle. This is a bad Blue Jays team that has made a lot of really terrible pitchers look really, really good over the last couple of months since the season started. But that being said, I would say that Tanaka feels it much more than he doesn't. It's just one of those things where Tanaka is very rarely a cash play for me because of that built-in variance that he has, and someone that I always love in GPPs. So Tanaka against a Blue Jays team, I would expect Tanaka to not be as owned as he should be. As of right now, he's projected to be 6% and be one of the highest scoring pitchers on the slate. So there is definitely something wrong with that. Projected to get one of the highest values on the slate, according to my projections. Me and Kyle's projections on Bathrobe Sports. So again, at the discount, you have to love Tanaka here. Just know that the risk is built in. On the other side, we have Clayton Richard, who is being saved today. Today, he gets to be the second worst pitcher in baseball because the Mariners are calling up someone who should have retired 4 or 5 years ago, but I'll get to that later. Clayton Richard is awful. The Yankees are going to be probably the second, if not the first highest owned stack today, and they should be. Anyone who argues with that is just trying to be too cute. I understand trying to be too cute because it's GPPs. If you play large tournaments, you can't be all chalk and win unless you want to win with a lot of people. But saying that the Yankees aren't a good play or that they're not as good a play as you think is absolutely ludicrous. LeMahieu, Voit, and Sanchez have been hot as anything lately. Torres and Hicks have been close enough to hot. Morales was cold and he's been heating up. Urshela has been, a big hit machine all year. There are enough bats here that while they're too expensive to get a couple of the good pitchers in, you can get a couple of these Yankees in with like a Max Fried and one of the higher priced pitchers, even a Tanaka, and still be able to get good pitchers and a good stack going. Granted, I don't know if I like them as much as a couple of the other teams, but having 9 bats, being the road team, going against one of the worst pitchers in baseball, all huge pluses for the Yankees. So again, I'm going to focus on LeMahieu, Voit, and Sanchez. I know that those are expensive plays, but those are the dudes that have been the hottest lately, and those are the dudes who can take advantage of the splits of Clayton Richard. If I'm going anywhere else, it's going to be to Gleyber Torres and then probably to Urshela. Let's move on. Tampa Bay and the Detroit Tigers. We have Blake Snell, who is a lock anytime he pitches against the Detroit Tigers, and Ryan Carpenter, who is a stack against lock anytime he pitches. So this game writes itself. I don't really have to even do that much analysis. The one thing I will tell you is, again, Blake Snell is projected to be, according to Roto-Grinders, the highest owned pitcher on the slate. I would not be surprised. The matchup against the Tigers is one that he is certainly going to be able to take advantage of. They do not hit well. They can strike out a bunch, but it should be noted that every pitcher is human, and even great pitchers, have bad days. So, there is nothing wrong. If this were Blake Snell and then the next best pitcher, was someone in the 6,000 range who you're going to be putting a hope and a prayer into. Edgar, I will get to that in 1 second. I think that with the dearth, I think that's the right word. Dearth means a lot, right? With the dearth of really good pitching today, it would behoove you to fade the two highest owned guys. I love Snell. I love Strasburg. If you're playing cash, get them all over your lineup. If you don't want to handle the risk, get them. Damn. The dearth means the other one. I always get that confused. Stupid me, my medicine brain. My medicine brain is not good sometimes with word-wise speaking English good. Scallops. Okay, so again, I think that on a day like today, strategically, I think the best thing to do is to heed the ownership projections. You have pitchers with the same upside, some of which, like Luis Castillo, are going to be 3% owned and at a savings of like $900 or over $1,000 from Strasburg. There is nothing wrong with bucking the expensive guys, even if you like them more, and taking a chance on someone who's going to be unowned. Oh, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much. I think it's important to realize that regret is not something that we need to hang on to. And that's not just in life, but in DFS. Like, if you make a sound decision, if you fade Blake Snell today for Luis Castillo, because Luis Castillo has the same ceiling and is 3% owned and is cheaper, and Luis Castillo gets blown up and Blake Snell does really, really well, you didn't fail. You made an informed decision that didn't go well. But that happens to everybody. That happens to the best and the most informed people in the craziest industries that you can imagine. There's nothing wrong with failure. There's something wrong with not being able to learn from it and accept it and move on from it. And there's something wrong with regretting it. You know what I mean? Everything is a life experience that we can learn from and that we could change our life and live by. Whether it's a little thing or a big thing, everything is one of those things. Everything. And if we just wallow and say what could have been, instead of being confident in what you do and realizing that if the process, Joel Embiid had it right. Trust the process. If your process is good, it's going to work out. So if you are happy with your process, even if it fails, be happy with the process. Be happy that you did the work that you needed to do. Be happy that you made the right choices, that you made the best choices you could with all of the information. That's true. Misery is evolving. Go to Rent, forget regret, or life is yours to miss, right? It's all over. And I believe in it very strongly. I really love that Kierkegaard quote, though, because that is human nature. Do it or don't do it. You're going to regret it either way. Either way, you're going to be like, man, I wish I had done that other thing. If I had done that other thing, it would have been better, but you never know. And that's the point. So again, Blake Snell might wind up being the best pitcher tonight. I would say that the odds are Blake Snell will probably wind up being the best pitcher tonight. I would say he has the most skill and he is the best matchup out of all these guys. But at the same time, he has a chance to blow up. 28% ownership when there are 11 pitchers at 9,000 and above to choose from is ludicrous. So again, if you're playing cash, be all over Snell. Snell is a great pitcher. Snell is a great play. If you want to just lock him in and differentiate yourself elsewhere, do it. I have no problem doing that whatsoever. But what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to try to take at least one of those really expensive, high ceiling pitchers that are getting ignored, whether it be, a Tanaka or a Castillo. There are plenty. A Ryu at 2% ownership, a Chris Paddock at 1% ownership, a Frankie Montas at 1% ownership. These are all dudes with legitimate ceilings. They have shown it to you over and over and over again this year. If I have the chance to get, a Chris Paddock with a similar ceiling to Blake Snell at 27% less ownership, how do you not take that chance if you're trying to win a GPP, right? That's the whole point of the game. It's you can't just pick the players. You have to play the game itself. And part of the game itself is knowing the construction and how to construct. And I may not always make the best decisions. I take a lot of risks. I don't mind it. I have no problem doing that. It may not be for everybody. Like I said, you may want to lock Snell in there. You may want to lock a Strasburg in there. Nothing wrong with that. For me, when the ownership says that these two dudes are going to take 28, 26% ownership, and there's 9 other guys with similar ceilings that are in the single digits, I'm going to load up on those single digit dudes because I am going to take the chance that 1% dude gets you 35 points and you're cashing that point. You just got to get a couple good bats and you're cashing at that point. So that's, again, my analysis on Snell and then the slate as a whole. And then the game theory as a whole when it comes to picking pitchers on a slate like today. And again, I said on the Tiger side, Carpenter, terrible pitcher. He's been in decent form lately, but I would consider that a fluke. He's just not that good. This is a Rays team that can really mash some lefties. Pham has been hot lately. Garcia's been hot lately. Arroyo's been hot lately. Meadows he's going to put up points against everybody. While it's still a little too early for me to bank on his splits, I still like to get to the All-Star break for these rookies before I make any sort of decision and dig in again. Meadows has shown to me that he does not have splits because I can see against righties and against lefties, he's getting extra base hits, stolen bases, home runs. He is doing everything against everybody. So I think that a good thing that you can do today, and this is something that I like to do because people generally avoid it, is play the lefty on lefty matchup. If you are stacking the Rays and you see the sea of right-handed batters, 8 of the 9 batters on the Rays team today are projected to be right-handed, I would take Austin Meadows because a lot of people are just going to go down and take, a cold Daniel Robertson for 3,100, a Heredia who granted is a lefty masher, but has not been hitting well at all for the last month. At 2,900, they're going to try to fit those guys in so they can get other people that they want, ignoring the fact that Austin Meadows at 5,700 is probably going to, outproduce Heredia and Robertson together. So you have to, spend the money as best you can. And if you are taking a Rays stack, if you have the money to take a Rays stack against Carpenter, I would strongly suggest you put them as one of your top stacks and strongly suggest getting Pham, Meadows, and Avisail Garcia, all 3 of them in there. Arroyo, if he's batting 7th or higher, I would take him as well. Otherwise, it doesn't translate as well in terms of the stack, although I would really like him. You could always work in someone in the middle of the 4 and the 7. Anyway, let's move on. Next game up is Minnesota. Oh, God, that hurt. Oh, that one hurt. The next game up is Minnesota and Cleveland. I remember that Cleveland is Bieber, Minnesota is Schmelzer. Is that how you pronounce it? Schmelzer. Schmelzer had his one good start last start. He showed you his ceiling. He is underpriced at 7,500. I'm not banking on him being able to do as well. But like I said before when I was giving the summary, Schmelzer at 7,500 has shown his upside in his last start. He is a good lefty, and this is not a good Cleveland team in terms of offense. There are a couple of bats here that I would take, as a one-off or let's see how feasible it is. Smeltzer is projected at 8% ownership. So yeah, it's not like a huge play against the field to stack against him. But I will say that If you are not playing them for 7,500, I have no problem playing these Cleveland bats today. Specifically, Francisco Lindor is a switch hitter that's better as a righty. So I like to target him when they're going against lefties. He's also been really, really hot right now. So regardless of if you're playing the Indians, Lindor is going to be one of those absolute one-offs that I absolutely love today. Santana has been hot lately. He's very good as a righty. Luplow is a lefty masher, assuming he's in there. Perez is going to be one of the better catcher options today. Greg Allen, surprisingly enough, has an OPS over 1,000 the last week, and he did that, over the last 14 days too. Greg Allen has been hitting really, really well at the bottom of the order. So you could have a wraparound stack with Allen and Lindor at the 9-1 and then add Santana at the 3. And while, again, that's a little more expensive than I would like, those 3 are fantastic bats. And if you are not playing Smeltzer, I would have no problem taking a mini there. But again, while I would rather have Fried at 7,800, I think that the 7,500 price tag for Smeltzer is also really, really underpriced. I think that one of the things you can do today that will separate you from the field, just understand, oh man, that hurts so much. I'm sorry. Just understand that it does bake in a whole bunch of extra risk for you, is because there are so many or so few really good stacks, and the really, really good ones are going to be super expensive. What you can do is take a Smeltzer and a Fried. A lot of people today are either going to take 2 expensive pitchers or 1 expensive pitcher and 1 cheap pitcher. What a lot of people are not going to do is take 2 of the 7,000 priced pitchers so that they can fit in all of the bats in the good stack that they want. And again, while it is risky, in a GPP, I have no problem at all locking Fried and Smeltzer in as your 2 pitchers, and then loading up on whichever one of those stacks I get to that you like the best. Again, I think the Cubs and Wrigley is going to be the chalky given the wind, but there are a ton of these that you can absolutely hammer. The other side of this game is going to be the trickiest spot of the day. Excuse me. I think what it would amount to for me is a stay away for Bieber. I like Bieber. I like his form. His last game, he showed you exactly what he can do even against a good team. But this is a Twins team that has been absolutely on fire lately. Kepler is cold, but apart from him, Polanco, Crone, Sano, Castro, and Buxton have all been absolutely on fire. And I also I expect them to get Nelson Cruz back today, who is also, a huge power bat, underpriced at 4,200 on DK and 3,300 on FanDuel, right in the heart of this lineup. So we have, value here. We have hot bats. We have, a lower projected total than you would think, but still 4.2 isn't something that, I'm going to target a 10,000 pitcher for. So again, I'm going to stay away from Bieber. I can understand if you're doing like 150 lineups. So for all y'all that do the 150 lineups, I would have some exposure to Bieber given the ceiling. I would have at least some exposure to every single pitcher 9K and over, even if it's just 1 or 2 throws at him. But for the most part, I would rather take, a couple of extra stabs at a Twins lineup, or just leave this game alone entirely. There are other stacks I like better and other pitchers I like better with similar pricing. Let's move on. Next game, we have the Giants and the Mets. We have Madison Bumgarner pitching against the Mets. So while I'm not wearing a hat today, I can tell you as a Mets fan that I hate Madison Bumgarner. Madison Bumgarner is the destroyer of worlds for the Mets. I don't know what it is, but whenever the Mets go against him, we can't hit and he can't not throw a shutout. So at 9,000 or 8,900 on FanDuel, I absolutely love Bumgarner today. I posted an article at the beginning of the season about 3-4 weeks in about how Bumgarner had worked incredibly hard in the offseason at increasing his spin rate in order to get back to where it had been a few years ago pre-injury. And all indications are that he has done so. His spin rates have increased and his pitching success has increased because of it. So while I don't think he's, fully back to the Madison Bumgarner, Cy Young caliber pitcher, I would expect him to have one of those types of outings today against the Mets. He has been in great form, and this is a Mets team that is, with Cano coming back as a lefty, it gets a little bit weaker. As crazy as it sounds, as hot as Echeverria has been, I would think the Mets lineup would have been stronger with that right-handed bat instead of Cano, who is not as successful against lefties. And I really don't expect to have success against that incredible sweeping curveball and really plus slider that Bumgarner has. He's just going to be absolutely murder on lefties. So, you have Pete Alonso, who's hot. I can understand going there. You have Frazier, who's hot. I can understand taking a punt there, given the pricing, $2,800 on FanDuel, $3,800 on DraftKings. But this is a game that, I'm going to be all over the pitching in, Bumgarner especially. On the other side is Syndergaard. Syndergaard has entered that realm of GPP-only pitchers. I think that if you listen to the interviews that he's been given after the starts, he's someone that he's either been feeling it and pitching, a complete game shutout, or he has not been feeling it. And, and I mean that literally. He has complained that the ball this year feels different. You just can't get the grip that he was accustomed to with the balls in past years. So this is something that, if he feels comfortable that day, we can expect great things out of him. And if he doesn't, then we can expect him to bomb against any offense, even the Giants, who I would say are the second worst offense in Major League Baseball. So I would have Syndergaard, but I would consider him a GPP option. The Giants don't strike out as much as you would like, not nearly as much as the Mets. He has shown his floor being really low. And, the Giants team is coming off playing really well over the last week. They don't have a single batter that's cold, which is the first time I've seen that for the Giants all season. And the most concerning thing I would say for the Mets and Syndergaard is if you look in the middle of the lineup, both Posey and Belt are hot right now. That's the reason the Giants are doing well. Those are the two hallmark hitters on this team. If those two are hitting well, I'm going to be a lot less likely to take a GPP's chance on a pitcher, especially when there are pitchers priced above and below him that I project to do better. So, I'd rather have Bumgarner than Syndergaard. I'm not going to have any Giants stacks. I'm not going to have any Mets stacks today. But if I'm playing 150 lineups, I will still have some exposure to Syndergaard. Like I said, anyone 9,000 and over, I'm going to have some exposure to. But Bumgarner would be one of my favorite plays of the day. I will also say that Bumgarner is only projected again on Roto-Grinders to be 9% owned. So we're getting a severely under-owned Bumgarner for the matchup and for his recent form. Him and Tanaka are both around 9,000 and are projected to get you 20 DKP. Both are under 10% owned. That is ridiculous. It's just utterly ridiculous. I need to take a sip of my drink, and then I need to do a quick medicine thing because the hip pain is not going away. And I do apologize for that. Talks amongst yourselves. Here, I'll give you a topic. Duran is neither a Duran nor a Duran. Discuss. All right, that'll have to do. Let's move on. Excuse me. Let's move on to the next game. The Marlins and the Brewers. We have Pablo Lopez, who's been terrible lately, going against Chase Anderson, who's actually been in really, really good form. If you look at Pablo Lopez over the last couple weeks, a 5.6 strikeouts per 9, 1.34 whip, and then the 4.66 ERA leading to a 6.56 FIP. Maybe we could take a chance on him if he was going against Midnight Oil. Yes, is better than Depeche Mode, is better than INXS, is better than Duran Duran, is better than U2. I don't know about that. I might have to put In Excess above Depeche Mode, but I'm totally fine with that lineup otherwise. I have a deep hatred of U2. Excuse me, as a musician, and I will get into that one of those days when I don't have a bunch more games to discuss, because I'm still in the 7 o'clock games, and I've been doing this for 45 minutes. So let's get to it. Pablo Lopez, terrible. Marlins pitcher, terrible, no good. I could do it. Oh man, I could do an hour just on Nirvana. Believe me, I can do. Yeah. Believe me, the stuff I could talk about is, yeah. I want to go on Jeopardy. That's my dream. That's been my dream since I was a kid. It'll be my dream until I get it. Keep taking the test. One of these days. I want to tell you, one of these days too, I'm going to tell you guys the story of how I got into DFS sports, how I got into DraftKings and all this other stuff, because it's because of that guy that just won the 32 games on Jeopardy, James Holzhauer. He is the reason, individually, personally, he is the only reason I ever started doing that ever. So it's funny that he became, a Jeopardy champion 5 years later, but it is funny. I could talk about a lot, but let's get back into the games because I have a lot more to go. So Lopez is terrible. He's going against a fantastic Brewers offense. Moustakas, Grandal, Thames, and Arcia have all been hot as anything lately. Yelich, you can play every day. Kane is heating up. I would never play Shaw, but he is 2,500 on DraftKings and 2,200 on FanDuel. They sent Hiura down to bring him back from the IL, which is stupid because he's terrible. But against a terrible Pablo Lopez in the middle of the lineup at 2,500 on DraftKings, that's hard to say no to a lot of times. And then on the other side, we have Chase Anderson, who again has looked great recently. A 9K per 9, 1 walks per 9. The 5 ERA is backed up by a 3.26 FIP, 3.94 xFIP, 3.86 Sierra. So he's been pitching much better than it looks with a good strikeout upside, and he's going against the free square today, the Marlins. So again, 7,200, I would still. Now we're getting a little more nitpicky. I would still rather take Fried at 7,800. I would probably rather have Smeltzer, but like I said before, if you're taking Fried and then you go Smeltzer or Anderson as your second pitcher, it'll let you get some bats and separate yourself from the field. And I have no problem taking either one of those three at all. So the one thing I'm going to point out, and I really do want to point this out, is because I've talked about this before. When reverse splits meet reverse splits, it's an explosion for the hitter. Today we have Chase Anderson, who is a reverse splits righty, and we have Jorge Alfaro for the Marlins, who is an extreme reverse splits righty. When you have that happen, we are going to see the catcher, or we're going to see the player in Alfaro today. I would bank on him being one of the top catching options. While I am not going to play any other Marlins, Alfaro is someone that you are going to get for 0 point something % ownership on DraftKings, because no one is going to pay $4,300 for him. $4,300 for someone on the Marlins. But, and I stress this again, the reverse splits on reverse splits is substantial. And on top of that, over the last week, Alfaro has a 533 batting average, a 1.600 OPS, a 533 ISO, and a 659 WOBA. His weighted runs created, again, in the last 7 days with 15 plate appearances is 6. Those are astronomical numbers. When you have someone as hot as that, who's going to be unowned, who is in as good a spot as you can be in terms of splits, I would love having a ton of Alfaro today. The one thing that I will tell you to look out for is Alfaro on FanDuel. The catcher first base spot, he's only 2,900. And a lot of people refuse to play catchers in that spot. So you're going to get him at almost no ownership as well. So again, I do like Chase Anderson today. Really love Alfaro today. Love Alfaro today. I really can't stress that enough. Next up, let's see, did they put a total out on this yet? Still no total on the Rockies and the Cubs. They are waiting, I guess, for all of the weather to fix itself or figure itself out before we know what it's going to be. We know the Cubs are huge favorites, but we would have known that just by seeing that as Jeff Hoffman pitching against Kyle Hendricks. Anyone who looks at that would know, oh, the Cubs are going to win today, or they have a much better chance of winning today. Jeff Hoffman is terrible. The Cubs are my favorite stack of the day, but they are also going to be the chalkiest stack of the day. The Cubs would probably be my favorite stack of the day regardless, but as I've explained before, Wrigley is one of the best wind fields, I would say, in Major League Baseball. What I mean by that is the game at Wrigley is more affected by wind than almost at any other park. You know, there are parks like San Francisco or like Texas where they have built the park in certain ways to minimize the effect that normal whipping winds would have going through the stadium. But the Cubs, you know, is 806-year-old stadium. It was built, before the Romans. If I had to pick between Hayward and Contreras, it's going to be Hayward. And I don't even have to think about that. I'll get into that later, though. I'm going to go through the specific bats. But again, the wind is blowing out double digits. It's going to be 11 plus miles an hour with higher gusts. So this is going to be one where we can count on some home runs being hit. If you're playing a home run competition, like the one on FanDuel where you pick home runs, feel free to take at least one bat from this game because someone here is going to hit a home run. At least one person here. I would say multiple people. This will probably be one of those games where if you have to bet which game has the most home runs hit today, Rockies Cubs is probably going to be the one I would put my money on. So again, Hoffman is terrible. He's a righty who doesn't belong in the big leagues. He's here because of an injury. He was bad in the minors, and he's been even worse in the majors. Just looking at it, 2.7 home runs per 9, one of the worst on the slate, 1.8 whip, 6.45 FIP. He's not good. And he's going against a Cub team that, again, can really mash. The only hot player on the Cubs right now is Jason Hayward, who has a 1.122 OPS and a 464 WOBA over the last week. And that's in 25 plate appearances. He's, walking as much as he strikes out. And that's as good as you can get from Hayward. He's a 318 ISO. Again, for Hayward, that is phenomenal. So not only is he getting on base, but he's getting extra base hits. So he's getting the points for you. So I absolutely, absolutely love him today. I assume Cargo starts. I don't love him, but if he's batting fifth again for 3,300 on DraftKings or 2,200 on FanDuel, I'm going to take that chance. Maybe not 100 out of 100 times, but I am going to take that chance. Rizzo was one of my favorite high-priced guys today. Bryant is in a very, very good spot, given that Hoffman doesn't show splits, so he's just as bad against righties and lefties. There's just a plethora of bats here. Almora is in a decent spot. Russell is cooling off, but he was really hot about a week ago, so he might find a stroke again, and he's underpriced. But this is a Cubs team. No one is cold. I'm going to work my way up and down that lineup. I would try to play, again, if you're doing 150 lineups, try to get, a bunch of different iterations of the Cubs because they are going to be chalky, but they're also going to score a bunch of runs today. 12, 13 mile an hour winds with 20 mile an hour gusts in Wrigley means that some pop-ups in the outfield are going to go out. And that's just the way it works. If you've watched the Wrigley Field games, that's just how it works. On the other side, we have Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks is an extreme ground ball pitcher. So I would not take any of the Rockies. The Rockies have been in very good form lately, but that's because they've been hitting in Colorado. While this is a good environment in terms of the wind condition, the Rockies hit poorly no matter what park it is outside of Coors Field. So I would expect them all to cool off. On top of that, again, this is a game where you're going to want to hit the ball in the air to take advantage of the wind, and I would focus on bats that can do that. Kyle Hendricks being an extreme ground ball pitcher. is someone that, he doesn't have the upside where I'm going to play him, but he also isn't going to give up the home runs where I'm going to target against him. He keeps the ball on the ground, and while he may make some mistakes, I'm not saying that an Arenado or a Story can't hit a home run today. I am saying that I would avoid stacking the Rockies, but I would load up on the Cubs in this game. I just can't wait to see what the total is going to be. Next up is Baltimore, Texas. We have a burner here. I expect Texas to also be one of the chalkiest teams on the night against Dylan Bundy. This game has an 11-run total. Texas 5.6, Baltimore 5.4. So I want to point out that what that should tell you, knowing that they are only 0.2 runs apart, and Texas is going to be chalky, is that you should probably focus on Baltimore bats, because Baltimore is going to score almost as many runs as Texas, more runs than almost anybody else on the slate, and they're going to go dramatically under-owned for their pricing and for the game environment. On top of that, Dylan Bundy has actually been in very good form recently. 9.3 strikeouts per nine, 1.11 whip, with a 4.26 ERA, and then 3.62 FIP, 3.68 xFIP, and a 3.63 Sierra. That shows me that he really has been pitching well, and he's been taking advantage of his strikeout upside. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I believe he was one of the dudes that I noticed this about. So if you look at the lineups page that I talked about the pitch selection, and I went into how people are throwing, what pitches everybody throws. So if you look at Dylan Bundy, he throws a four-seam fastball 47% of the time, a slider 22% of the time, a changeup 20% of the time, a curveball 8% of the time, and a sinker, that is wrong, and a sinker 2% of the time. I looked at his overall career number there and not the number for this year. Now, this is different than last year. Last year, he threw his four-seam fastball the same, right? But he threw his changeup 10% of the time, and now he's throwing it 20% of the time. He was throwing his slider 25% of the time, and now he's throwing it 21% of the time. He was throwing his sinker 8% of the time, and now he's throwing it 2% of the time. So what that shows me is that Dylan Bundy, who has been having moderate, not fantastic success, moderate success this year, but he's priced 7,400 and 7,500. So it's not someone that I'm looking to play, but he is going underrated. If you look at the pitch selection and everything else, he has changed. When he came up in 2016, he was throwing his four-seam fastball 58% of the time, and he didn't even have a slider. Now he's throwing the slider 22% of the time, and it's his second most popular pitch. It's just a question of the evolving that a pitcher does, and you have to be, aware of that. So while Dylan Bundy is not, an MVP Cy Young candidate, he's not going to win any awards. He is underrated, if that makes any sense. You can still be bad, but be underrated. You know what I mean? Like McDonald's isn't good, but it's still underrated. Like it's not garbage, but it's not the worst thing I've ever eaten. You know what I mean? Not great, but it's underrated. Same goes for Dylan. Dylan Bundy is like the McDonald's of pitchers. He's not great, but he's underrated. So for that reason, given the chalk that the Rangers have, I would avoid them today. Again, in multiple lineups, get some exposure because it's a great spot. No one's going to say otherwise. I just don't think it's as great a spot as people think. And the fact that they're going to be so chalky, there are other stacks I would rather have that I think are in better spots. I also want to point out that Drew Smyly, who's pitching for Texas, has been the third worst pitcher on the slate. 6.5 strikeouts per nine, 5.7 walks per nine, which is a 1.82 whip. That's terrible. But the worst thing is he has an 8.18 ERA, and his FIP is 8.33. His xFIP is 7.26. He has been pitching absolutely horribly. And this is a Baltimore team that I've been saying for weeks is not great, but again, like Dylan Bundy, is underrated. They are not as bad as people think. They are not the Marlins. They are not the Giants. They are not a free square. They have some legitimately good bats in that lineup. Alberto leading off against lefties is a lefty masher. Villar has been hitting really well. Mancini is a fantastic hitter. Renato Nunez has been on fire lately. Severino is a good catching option. Keon Broxton mashes lefties, and he's batting seventh. The only player I'm definitely not playing from the Orioles is Richie Martin, but that's 8 other batters that I would give at least some consideration to against Drew Smyly, and they're going to go completely unowned. So like those expensive pitchers, if you see these pitchers, 11 pitchers, and only 2 of them are getting ownership, it behooves you to take some of the pitchers that are not. Much like the stacks, if you see, that there are 5 or 6 really, really good stacks on the day, and only 2 of them are getting the ownership, then it really would behoove you to focus yourself on, having some more Nats or having some more Orioles, having some more Braves, taking advantage of where the ownership could and should be, but is not. That is how I use ownership projections. Like I've always said, it's not like an end-all be-all, but when I do have a tier of people, it is a good tiebreaker that I like to use in order to help differentiate once everything else has been broken down. Let's move on to the next game. We have the Red Sox against the Kansas City Royals. Call me crazy, but this is a bats game purely for me, purely. Eduardo Rodriguez is the second most popular pitcher, according to Roto Grinders, on the slate, and I think that is ludicrous. 8.1 strikeouts per 9 is fine. I would want a little more, but I'm not going to complain. But 3.3 walks per 9, 2.5 home runs per 9, which is one of the highest on the slate, a 1.3 whip, which is not great, and then a 5.73 ERA, 6.24 FIP, 5.13 xFIP. None of those numbers are great, and a lot of those numbers are bad. On top of that, I've talked multiple times in the past about how the Royals, while a poor lineup, have some of the best lefty mashers in baseball. You may not realize it, but Whit Merrifield is one of the best lefty hit or righties that hit lefties in the entire game of baseball. That dude mashes lefties. Mondesi mashes lefties. Soler mashes lefties. And Cuthbert, we don't know yet, but he has been on fire recently. So these are 4 legitimate bats I would absolutely love to take. On top of that, while I don't love him, a punting Maldonado at 2,700, if you're taking 4 other Royals, is a very fine move. The Royals are going to get 4.5 runs. Rodriguez is chalky. And as I've said before, one of the best ways to separate yourself from the field is to take stacks against a chalky pitcher, because it not only separates yourself from that pitcher, but it separates yourself from all the people that are not going to play those batters because they're playing that pitcher or they think that pitcher is going to do well when he has not been pitching well. And I don't expect him to do well as a lefty going into Kansas City. On the other side of the game, however, the Red Sox are going against Glenn Sparkman, who doesn't belong in the major leagues and probably the 3rd worst pitcher on the slate today. The Red Sox are absolutely going to mash him, and I would also expect them with Texas and Chicago to round out the highest owned stacks of the day. So, when looking, to separate yourself, I may look elsewhere, but Glenn Sparkman is bad, man. 3.2 strikeouts per 9 and a 6.4 walks per 9. His walks per 9 is double his strikeouts per 9, and his strikeouts per 9 is like nothing. He's not striking people out. His average and BABIP are not they're slightly lucky. And his whip is still 1.76. Everything. His ERA, FIP, XFIP, Sierra are all about 8. Everything about Sparkman is bad. So you have a Red Sox team that has a 6.1 projected run total. Their ownership is going to be high, but they deserve it. What I will say is, Jackie Bradley Jr. has maintained being hot. I would be worried that he's going to start to cool off soon because it's been a while. But 3,600 on DK and 2,700 on FanDuel is not a bad one-off. Everybody else is really, really expensive. So this is going to be one of those ones where, if you are playing the Fried and the Schmelzer, or, the Fried and the Anderson, and that lets you take a full Red Sox stack, that is going to separate you from the field as well. Because if you are playing pretty much even one of those really expensive pitchers, and again, 28% of people are playing Snell and 26% of people are playing Strasburg, according to RotoGrinders, you are not going to be able, even if you play one of them, to fit in a full Red Sox stack. Betts is 5,000, Benintendi 47, Martinez 5,000, Devers 5,000, Bogarts 5,400, Chavez 4,800. There's no possible way you could get 4 bats in there if you are playing those expensive guys. So a great way to separate yourself from the field would be to go full in on the Red Sox with some of the cheaper pitchers. They're going to work some Texas bats in. They're going to work some other bats in. Oh, geez. My wife is still going. So she had red hair, and she's changing it for the summer. So it's taking them forever. Yeah, that's fine. I'm doing the video. I'm got to finish this up, though, because my leg is killing me. So, yeah. Red Sox, one of the best stacks of the day. Their ownership is going to be too low given how difficult it's going to be for people to fit them in. I would expect them to have relative popularity as one-offs, but not a lot of popularity as a stack. I think that stack is going to go under-owned. So again, great way to separate yourself from the field is to do those 2 middle-price pitchers and then load up on one of those really expensive teams that people are not going to be able to afford all of the bets on. Next game is the Cincinnati Reds and the Cardinals. Here we have Luis Castillo, who is a Cy Young candidate. Like I said, he was the second in line, second favorite to win the Cy Young this year behind Ryu versus Genesis Cabrera, who had a decent first start, but the underlying numbers say that he did much worse than it looked. Luis Castillo has actually been in pretty poor form lately. 6.7 strikeouts per 9, 7.9 walks per 9 for a 2.25 whip. The 6.75 ERA and the 8.3 FIP for Luis Castillo is pretty ridiculous. That being said, Luis Castillo is still an amazing pitcher, and he is going to be completely unowned today at 10-1. So again, he's one of those guys where I would have no problem taking the upside that you're going to get with him, and the lack of ownership that you're going to get as well, because of how poor his form has been. He still has that 30-point upside. He can still get you more points than anybody else. There is certainly there is no way to argue that you can't say it's impossible that Castillo is going to come out tonight as the highest owned pitcher. Is it probable? No, because there's a lot of really good pitchers today, but it's certainly possible. And if you can get him at 2-3% owned, I know the Cardinals are good, but they're not that good, and they have been pretty cold lately, especially, DeYoung, Fowler, Wong, and Bader have not been in good form. Carpenter looks to be cooling down. The only 2 Cardinals that have been doing well are Goldschmidt, who's a righty that hits better against lefties, which is not good against Castillo, and Waiters, who's a switch hitter that hits better as a righty, which is, good for Castillo. So, I really do like Castillo today. I think he's going to go under-owned and he's going to go undervalued. While everyone else is spending 1,000 more on other pitchers that are already chalky, I have no problem taking him, which means, again, no Cardinals. On the other side, Genesis Cabrera, like I said, he pitched fine. He didn't pitch great. 12.3 strikeouts per 9 was great, but 5 walks per 9. It's basically what I said when I was previewing him. He was someone with decent strikeout upside, but he also walked a lot of people, and we should expect that his strikeouts are going to go down and his walks are going to go up. And while his strikeouts stayed pretty high up, his walks did go up. That 1.91 whip is not good. The fact that he's 7.4 ERA is bad. 5.6 FIP means not as bad as the ERA, but it's still not great. It's not someone you can count on. I will say, though, if you are going super cheap, you are not going to get a person with a 12 strikeout per nine at 6,700. So while this is the deepest of the GPP plays, if you're playing 150, I'm going to have some exposure to Genesis Cabrera. Just know that that comes with incredible risk. I will say that I'm not really going to have exposure to the Reds today. I know they're going to get about 5 runs. I understand that they're the favorites here. The only hot hitter is Casali. I just don't like the offense as a whole, and given the other similar priced options that are going against pitchers without strikeout upside, I would rather target them. If this were a different day with different bats that were available, I would probably love the Reds a lot. But this lineup against Cabrera, I think will be able to even if he walks people, if he walks Votto, he'll be able to get Puig, with the strikeout. He walks, Iglesias, he'll be able to get Casali or Peraza or Farmer in the 8-hole with a strikeout. So this is something that I think that, I'm not going to target either side, except in deep GPPs, where I am definitely going to have at least some exposure to Genesis Cabrera. Hour 10, and I still have 4 games. Oh, it hurts. I'm going to make this a little quicker. And I apologize in advance for that, but it's a lot easier from here on out. We have the Dodgers and the D-backs next. Hyunjin Ryu is the favorite for the NL Cy Young. That means you can play him any day. His ownership is like 3% right now. That is insanely low. If you are paying $11,000 for someone, I am going to have it be Ryu. I know the Diamondbacks are the trickiest offense of all those 3 guys that are priced over 11,000, but I also know that Ryu has been in fantastic form. And he is murder against righties. He is murder I'm right. He is murder against righties. His weakness is lefties. And the only person that is going to hit lefty here is David Peralta, who just came off the IL and isn't going to have a swing back. So I think Ryu has the upside. I think that Ryu at 3%, if he was the 26% in Strasburg was the 3%. I would want all the Strasburg. But those guys are close enough in terms of where you would project them that ownership should be enough to put Ryu in the stratosphere. I know, again, the D-backs are a good team in a good stadium, but they're only projected to get 3.6 runs, and the stadium is less affected when everything is closed off. And I believe it's going to be 99 or 100 today in Phoenix, so I would expect everything to be closed off, which means better for the pitchers. On the other side, we have Taylor Clark, another one of those pitchers that doesn't belong in the major leagues. He is going to get shellacked today. While I would rather, I would rather have the Red Sox over the Dodgers. It's going to be close if you're going to do that full stack of a team. You have the Peterson, the Muncy, the Bellinger, the Turner, and the Seager, all at 4,600 or more. All are fantastic plays. All of them, apart from Turner, are hot as anything right now. And like I said, Taylor Clark is just not that good a pitcher, doesn't have a lot of strikeout upside. And that's going to be lowered by a Dodgers team that strikes out the 3rd least in baseball. He walks a ton of people, which is going to be exacerbated by a Dodgers team that walks all the time. And they're just going to be able to take him deep. So I think the Dodgers are another one of those really great stacks that you could work in there. I wouldn't think they're going to be as popular as the Cubs or as the Red Sox. So I would maybe sneak them in where you can. But I really do like the Dodgers a lot. Taylor Clark does not belong in the major leagues yet. On the other, the next game, Oakland and LA. This one is really easy. Montas at Canning. I really like both pitchers. Montas has been pitching like he wants the Cy Young in the American League. Apart from Trout, this is not an Angels team that worries me at all. They have their hot and cold days, but they're not, up and down a lineup that you're going to have people priced 5,000 except for Trout. There's a reason like everyone on the Angels is 4,000 and under. And part of it's because Frankie Montas, which should tell you everything. But part of it's just because they're not that good. So Frankie Montas at 10-4 is unowned today. On FanDuel, he's only 8,700, which means he's one of the best values you're going to have on FanDuel pitching today. But Frankie Montas is a great play. I don't think he has the upside that a Castillo has, so I would rather have Castillo than Montas. But both are right up there in terms of plays I absolutely love today in the 10K range that no one else is on for some reason. On the other side, we have Griffin Canning, who I like. The one thing with Griffin Canning, I would play him if I fill everything else in and I have like 8,500, 8,700 left. But I'm not going to target Griffin Canning. He's a good pitcher, but this is a good A's team. And Griffin Canning at 8,500, like I would just rather save that money and go down to Fried or go down to one of the other mid 7K priced guys. I would expect Canning to have the exact same upside that a Max Fried has, except he's going against a harder offense. So while I do like Canning, and again, for those that play the 150, I would definitely have some exposure to Canning today. He's not someone I'm targeting, in a single lineup, unless the price happens to fit. I would rather pay down slightly and upgrade a bat, get Max Fried or again, one of those other guys in there. So I'm not playing the bats in this game. And that's very simple. Now we get to what is the stack of the day, the stack that I am going to have 5 people of no matter what. I'm talking in terms of game theory, but me personally, like if I was playing 5 lineups today, I would have 5 Astros in every single one. I assume that what I read last night is accurate, and Jonathan, they still haven't officially announced it. So this is subject to change. So, obviously, check out the article later. But Jonathan Neese is supposed to start for the Seattle Mariners. Jonathan Neese should have retired 4 years ago when the Mets cut him for being awful, like not even a functional major league pitcher. And now he's a lefty going against the Astros, who are, granted, without 3 or 4 of their best lefty mashers, but still a fantastic lineup that is going to be able to absolutely destroy him. On top of that, you have Bregman at 5,100, Brantley at 4,600, and then pretty much everybody else in the lineup is 4,000 and under, including, while they're cold, Tyler White at 2,900 and Mayfield at 2,800. You can get 5 Astros in and good pitching and still get a lot of the runs that are going to be scored today. Because again, and I can't stress this enough, Jonathan Neese, when he gets called up today, will be the worst pitcher in baseball. That's not a tier anymore. There is just one dude, Jonathan Neese, at the bottom, and then everybody else that's bad, ages above him. Give me all the Astros today. On the other side, we have Wade Miley. Wade Miley is 400 more than Max Fried, and I think that he's in a tougher matchup. So again, I put Wade Miley into the Canning camp. He is someone that I like today. I'm not going to be targeting Mariners except for Encarnacion, who is hot, and I still think, when Encarnacion is hot, you ride him regardless. While Miley can put up a great start and Encarnacion can hit 2 home runs today, both of those things are possible. He's only 8,200, Miley, and there's no reason that he couldn't get you 25 DKP and Encarnacion hits you 2 home runs. Both of those things can coexist. So while on a 15-game slate, it's a little more risky to play a bat against a pitcher. I am generally avoiding the Mariners, except Edward Encarnacion, who I would have exposure to. And Miley, like Canning, is someone that if I'm playing a lot of lineups, I would have some exposure to, but I would rather go up to a couple of those 9,000 guys or down to a few of those 7,000 guys to help me fit in some bats better. But again, Miley and Canning, both good plays. I'm not really targeting bats against them. They're just priced up too much for sharing a ceiling with people that are 1,000 below them. If that makes any sense. I hope I'm making sense today. I may be too inside baseball. I'm trying really hard to kind of like word this the way I'm thinking about it. Once the pain kicked in, it's been a pretty big jumble. So I apologize again. Last game of the day. Oh, crap. I forgot to answer your question. Edgar, are you still here? Edgar Chavez, if you're still here, let me know. I want to answer your question. I'll do it right after this game, and then I'll sign off. If not, then I'll do it at the end, and I hope you watch it later. I'm so sorry. I did mean to answer that. The last game, we have the Phillies and the Padres. Jared Eichhoff is projected to be the 4th highest owned pitcher. Jared Eichhoff over the last 2 weeks has a strikeouts per nine of 4.8, a home runs per nine of 4.8. He has an ERA of 7.71, an FIP of 9.36. If you go by FIP over the last 2 weeks, Jared Eichhoff has been the worst pitcher on this slate. He's given up one more home run per nine than the next worst pitcher on this slate. You could take Chase Anderson and add him to Reynaldo Lopez, and you're still not quite at the home runs per nine that Jared Eichhoff has let up in the last couple of weeks. And he's the fourth most expensive pitcher. The Padres showed yesterday that they are warming up. If they can do that against Nola, they can certainly do that against Eichhoff. And I would have absolutely no problem taking one of those Padres stacks as a great way of leveraging yourself against the field. Because, I'd like to play Reyes. Machado is heating up. Renfroe is hot as anything. Myers and Kinsler have been hitting well. Garcia and Hosmer get the splits advantage. Hosmer's been doing well. Garcia, not so much. But there are a lot of bats you can take in San Diego. And while they may not be the best, Eichhoff has been that bad. And again, projected to be the fourth highest owned pitcher. That is ludicrous. Chris Paddock, on the other hand, is going against a cold Phillies team who just got owned by a much worse Eric Lauer yesterday. There are only two hot batters on the Phillies with Harper and Hoskins. We have McCutchen, who got injured yesterday, and I expect him not to play tonight, which means we have Jay Bruce in there, who I don't trust because I've seen him play. And I don't expect a change of scenery to get him going. I expect him to have to learn his spot again. So, yeah. Real Muto not hitting well. Cesar Hernandez is leading off, not very good. Segura has been cold. Franco has been cold. This is just not a good hitting Phillies team apart from Harper and Hoskins lately. So while I don't mind, if you're not playing Paddock, doing like a super mini stack of the Phillies with just Harper and Hoskins, or taking a one-off on either Harper or Hoskins, Paddock is in the Luis Castillo camp. As far as I'm concerned, he is someone that is 3% owned, 2% owned, who should be double-digit owned because he has the upside of anybody else that's pitching today. He can get you 10, 12 strikeouts without a doubt against this Phillies team. And he should not be 3% owned. He should be a lot higher than that. So again, in order to get over the field, I'm going to focus on these expensive pitchers with similar ceilings as the other ace pitchers that are going completely ignored. Paddock and Castillo are going to be my two favorites there. So the last thing I'm going to answer, God. Sorry guys, the pain, the leg, I can't, it's not stopping. He asked, is it better to stack the top of the order or to stack who's hot? I think it's better to make sure that whatever stack you have, the batters are close enough to each other that they can have some effect on one another, right? But I think that it's fine to take batters from anywhere in the lineup. The ownership on people at the bottom of the lineup, are always significantly less than the ownership for people at the top of the lineup. So that's, what I like doing. So for example, for today, if I like the Astros the best, which I do, I like doing wraparound stacks, where if, the 7, 8, 1, 3, 4 hitters are the hot hitters that I like the best, those are going to be the hitters that I'm going to target. So I like taking players from the bottom. I know, Bazam. I know. Believe me. I know. If it didn't settle my stomach as much, I wouldn't even. But you're right. It's a problem. I need to start doing water. I keep trying. I just don't like the taste. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. I think that the people at the top of the order have a better chance of getting up again, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily the best. It just means that they have a higher chance to produce. But anyway, thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to get a water bottle and start doing that next time. I have to go lay down and put my leg up. I love you all. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate you joining me. And I will hopefully get to work on that article as soon as lineups start coming out, and you could see any changes between now and later, like if anybody's resting or anybody gets cut or whatever. So thank you all very much. Have a beautiful day. Best of luck, and I'll catch you all with the article later. Assuming I can sit up. If I can't sit up, I apologize again.